All right. Hey, everybody. Before we start, I think it'd be good to just have everybody kind of wake up a little bit and check your bank account right now. Just something happened in that last. No, I'm just kidding. Everybody's like, oh shit, what the fuck? Okay, let's go ahead and let's make some introductions. Brandon, why don't you start?
Sure. Hey, everyone. Excited to be here. I'm Brandon. I lead product at Zetachain. We're a new L1 focused on solving interop, not just closed ecosystems, but any blockchain, Bitcoin, Dogecoin, Cosmos, EVM, anything like that.
All right, Phil.
Go got our mics. Hey, everybody. My name's Phil Hedayatnia. I started a company called Airfoil that does product design, engineering, branding work for over 100 companies across the crypto industry. And we also operate an early stage venture fund called Airfoil Ventures. So be here talking about design and UX and Web3, which we sorely need. So thanks so much.
All right, Ori.
Hi, I'm Ori. Some of you may know me as the co-founder of Orca. We are the leading crypto marketplace on Solana, as measured by trade volume. My background is actually originally as an engineer. Studied CS, worked as an engineer for a couple years, then worked as a designer in tech and at IDEO for a couple of years in Tokyo before actually moving over into the world of crypto and becoming a certified DGen. Still here, still building post-FTX collapse.
It's been all of like 2 weeks.
Yeah. It's been tough,
I've been here so long. It felt like, look at how many white hairs I have.
I almost didn't make it.
Yeah, I know. Cheryl, please.
Hi, this is Cheryl from PointSwap. PointSwap is a new Web3-based loyalty point exchange. We integrate with existing e-commerce platforms, and we use the DeFi pricing models like AMM to solve the pricing problems for the loyalty points. We aim to build the next generation Uniswap for real-world commerce. Thank you, everyone.
All right. So this is the contestants today. Myself, I'm CEO of Conductive. We basically do Web3 tooling, trying to figure out attribution, analytics, all this kind of things. Like, things are just completely missing in our space. So I think before I start, just one more time, who actually knows what UX stands for? There's literally one person raising their hand. Okay.
And she's actually one of my employees.
Okay. We don't know what UX stands for in this crowd. That's okay. We better explain what UX is because I feel this is required at this point, right? Okay. So before I start the deeper talks, can we explain what UX is? You had the great explanation of what UX was.
All right, let's try it. Yeah, so user experience. I think it's probably actually best defined in relation to something that a lot of people confuse it for, which is user interface or UI. Or people tend to lump them together into UI, UX. But the way that at least I think about it is that whereas a user interface is actually all of the elements that people may interact with on a screen, that's your buttons and forms and all of that is really important. User experience, as I would say, is actually a superset of user interface and basically covers the entire flow that a user takes, going from initially whatever it is that they want to accomplish on your platform to hopefully actually accomplishing that in a way that's smooth, easy, and intuitive.
All right, so this is really important. I think there's a big question. We all weren't born into MetaMask. We weren't all born understanding what Uniswap was. How many people had difficulty figuring out how to use MetaMask the first time you installed it? Oh, see? Okay, well, this is what UX is about. All right, so let's get into this. I guess the first question I'm gonna ask, and feel free to chime in. How can Web3 become more accessible and user-friendly for people that have limited knowledge, especially about technical knowledge and things like that? Like, what can we do as UX professionals, and how do we improve Web3 to do that? So perhaps you would like to tackle this question that I completely came up with originally.
From PointSwap perspective,
no, please, yeah.
We take four basic but meaningful steps to improve the UX for the user. First one, for to onboard the new user that had never used any crypto product before, we integrate our wallet into our application to reduce the friction of user experience. And for the users that are familiar with crypto product, they can use their own wallet. And the second step is before we ask our user to sign any message or transaction, we explain the detail and let the users to know what they're going to do and to build a trust between the users and us. And the third one is we will batch our transaction and to improve the user experience when they're using our products by smart contracts. And the fourth one is we want to reduce the frequency when the users switch their apps and to use our products more smoothly when they're trying their first Web3 products. That's our first step to improve the user experience.
And if I can jump in real quick on that one too, I think the first thing is hide it, right? If somebody is trying to, for example, we talked recently to like a kind of Web3 social networking startup. And they immediately, they use something called Web3 Auth, which is an API that you can use to generate a wallet on the fly, pass it through to the application. So somebody can sign in with Google, they can sign in with Apple and get started, right? The place where blockchain matters is on interoperability, the idea that if you purchase an asset on one platform, you can take it somewhere else. But the reality of kind of the UX of Web3 today is that we're asking users to prepare for the future state where they want to move that asset before they actually want to use that asset. We're basically telling the users, do a lot of work to understand and use Web3 before we've actually proven to you that using it will improve your life in some way or generate some value. So I think just we need to hide the blockchain until it's necessary in a similar way to the way people interact with the internet, right? I mean, how many, it's like, I think one of the things that I noticed just like volunteering in my school computer lab in like high school was how many times when you're working with somebody that's a little bit older and a little bit less well-versed with kind of the personal computer, that how many times they would Google, they would like open Bing and then Bing search Google to get there. Because to them, the search box is the interface. So it's okay for us to hide more of the blockchain and just make things simpler for users.
Yeah, I want to ask you guys again. I'm going to make this really interactive for everyone because I think that's probably a better UX for you sitting out there. But how many people started using Web3 for the tech? Okay, literally nobody. And I think that's the point, right? We use Web3, right, because we want to do something. Get rich, not be in banking anymore, or buy an ape picture. And these things kind of forced us into this situation where we had to learn. But if it was made easier, then we'd probably just see more adoption. More adoption means more places that we can dump our bags. So it's really important for us to have better UX in the space because we need to have more people have adoption because that's kind of the point of this whole thing, right? That's what improving UX is about. So yeah, did you want to chime in? I was just kidding about the bag thing.
I was actually going to disagree with what you said.
Oh,
in
please,
the sense
yes.
that I think a lot of people come into Web3 purely because of the tech. Like, if we're posing it back to the audience, how many people in the audience code, right? I'd say a decent number. Okay, a few. I think a lot of people come into crypto because it's just a frontier for some of the most interesting technological challenges in society, and that's actually caused a lot of user experience problems because let's say, for example, my background's in programming. I think we talk a lot in programming about the difference between, for example, imperative and declarative programming, right? Back in the day, we were all writing out println hello world or whatever. You tell the computer exactly every little step to take in order to get to the desired result. But declarative programming, in contrast, you just tell the computer the desired result that you want, and then the system is actually smart enough to figure that out by itself, right? So instead of saying println everything one line at a time, right? The computer's a little bit smarter. It can kind of figure it out if you just say print hello world, right? In more modern programming languages. But because so many designs are actually made by engineers in crypto, they just very, very, very closely model the actual underlying technological systems, right? Or their actual models. We need to do more black boxing, like Phil was saying, right? Users should be able to tell the system what their desired result is and not actually worry about whether it's a blockchain or which blockchain it is. And I think that's caused a lot of problems, actually.
So you're saying that if I had a Linux prompt phone, it would be less good than the iPhone?
Well, I think we could get into a real argument about Linux versus other.
No, because obviously I'm saying something completely asinine. But anyway, let's move on. Oh, okay. If I had Linux, this would work better. Okay.
Technically, iOS is on a Unix kernel, but anyway.
I know. I meant literally if I could just ls this. Okay, anyway, so here's another question for you guys, completely generated by myself. What is the single biggest challenge for designing UX for Web3 applications or protocols? And this is definitely open to everybody. It's a consolidated question.
I actually think off of Ori's last answer, I think there's a really important point in that I want to sort of underscore, which is I think that a big reason that the space hasn't really moved forward very much in the past few years when it comes to making these experiences easier for users is that we sort of exist in a bubble, but a bubble that's really, really large. Ever since I started working in this industry, legitimately most of my friends are in it, to the point where if we're splitting dinner, I'm just like, oh, like what's your wallet address so we can split with USDC? You can't do that with most people in the world. But if we're successful at what we're doing, 10 years from now, there's going to be almost 1 billion people using the stuff we're building. And that group of people is not going to look like this room today. It's going to look like a far broader, more representative sample of the globe. That's going to include folks in the US, that's going to include folks in Colombia, that's going to include folks in Ghana. We've got to meet people where they are. And I think sometimes I'll sit down with founders, right, and they'll say, well, you know, because I'll suggest, for example, adding an onboarding flow to their DeFi protocol.
For Truong, right?
For Truong? Oh my God. But real quick, so I'll say, like, you need to add an onboarding flow. You have no support to the user when they arrive. And they're like, well, that's longer. Isn't it better UX if we make it shorter, right? If they have a wallet, they can just click connect wallet, and then they can jump straight into the application. I was like, well, onboarding flows aren't just for capturing like usernames and passwords. It's also for telling the user, here's what the application does, and here's how you can be successful using it. And I think we have to reorient our priorities, right? Instead of being so focused on how can we get the highest number of people to use the things we do, throw giant parties, blow marketing budgets, get people in who then leave 2 weeks later, we need to focus on maximizing the number of people who are actually successful in some way using the applications we build. And once we make that shift, that's how we get to the next billion.
Yeah, so I mean, everyone going to parties tonight, that's not the right thing to do. Okay, anybody else want to answer this question? And if I need to reiterate it again, I remember this. What's the single biggest problem that you think is hindering UX, either on the protocol level or on the application level?
I mean, I think Ori kind of touched on it too when she kind of...
You just agree.
Ratted you out, but I think it might not necessarily be a UX thing, but there's such a...
This is a UX talk, sir.
Religious or spiritual component to wanting to use a product. And when that is the main incentive, whether it's like, oh, I want to get rich or I want to be like part of this big movement, you kind of ignore how bad things are until they are really bad. And that ends up letting engineers design UX. Lets blockchains be, very hard to grasp. And when you're thinking about protocols all the way up to UI, UX, it's, I think it bubbles up from the protocol. So like when you have an engineer designing what data is even available on a blockchain, that controls what MetaMask can even tell you that a transaction can do. And then that also goes into like different blockchains. You can't even send things from one place to another. You have to figure out every single step.
I'm just glad like if it doesn't drop my transaction. Yeah, I'm already pretty happy. Like, you know, I'm not going to mention any names, but you know who you are.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can chime in on this one. Actually.
Oh, yeah, please, yeah.
I would say like the biggest challenge that I see for UX in crypto right now is actually the technology itself. I think we're just not there yet, right? Like I can't tell you how many hours I've wasted like debating with my co-founder who is the deep tech guy for Orca, about things that I'd love to build in terms of user experience, but honestly, it's just not feasible right now, right? I think people have really unrealistic expectations that Web3 will be able to behave with the same level of smoothness and responsiveness that's possible in Web2, but this is decentralized, right? If it's decentralized, then simply these things are harder, right? Like there are confirmation times, they take longer, and users will have to have different expectations. So I think actually what we should be focusing on overall as an industry is kind of, like Phil said, meeting people where they're at, like where people who are already adopters are like aware of these constraints. But in the meantime, we need to be focused on actually making the technology scalable.
So I'm going to go off script for a second because that's always fun. If we were to judge today, where we are today, and make it analogous to the internet, what year is this right now?
98, roughly.
1998. So what was happening in 1998?
I was born.
So you have no further transactional history before that.
But I'll give you maybe an example of that. I remember picking up my parents' desktop computer. It was like a gray HP Pavilion. And it was the first version of Windows 98 that came with the Plus package, which was a package designed to get people to start using the internet. And Microsoft was trying to push that forward. It had some really cool features. Embedded in QuickTime Player, you could actually watch clips from all the Disney, like ABC properties, ESPN. There's something called Web TV for Windows that did that too. There was a lot of like beginning like online gaming stuff. And it all was kind of janky, but it certainly showed promise. And it showed that people could tell where things were headed. They just knew that they were years away from getting there. And I think actually we're at that point. Because there are serious like applications of crypto tech. There are like really vibrant online communities that are gated by NFTs. Like we're already providing some utility. We can see the future. But at the same time, we have to acknowledge that like we've got another decade to go before we actually get there.
Got it. Anybody else want to give it a shot? Like, does everybody agree that this is currently 1998? Bill Clinton is president, and things are going well. Like, so in 3 years, it's everything gonna be good, right? Yeah. 2000 was a really insane year. Yeah. I actually completely disagree with you. I think it's like 1985, the year that I was born. And I think, I still interact with certain protocols where they're like, yeah, I was like, hey, so how do I unstake? Like, oh, well, we only have the stake button. And I'm like, okay, so how the fucking unstake this shit? Like, I want to get out, And they're like, oh, well, if you want to do that, you got to go to Etherscan and just copy and paste this sentence. And I'm like, right. That's the way you do it, And I don't remember Windows making me do that. Yeah. So, okay, let's get back on script. This was a detour. How much time do we have left? Do we seriously have 17 minutes? Are you kidding me? Okay. I'm out of questions, actually. I'm sorry. Okay, no, okay. All right, well, here's a question then. Has UX improved over the past 2 years after the DeFi explosion? Right, so, I don't know how many of y'all was here, like, in 2017, but the UX experience is a little different now. Things work now. So, compared to maybe 2019, 2020 to today, do we see any drastic changes in UX? Do we see any kind of behavioral patterns that we see that are different or things like that, I will say that, number one, I don't trust anything anymore. In 2020, I was a little bit more naive, like, oh, there's a cool MetaMask thing, sure, let me log in with my entire net worth, it's fine, right? Today, like, I'd be like, what is this? Like, you want me to sign in? I was like, geez, what else do you want from me? My social security number? What do you guys see as a kind of a trend change?
I think the one change, if we're talking about DeFi specifically, is that I'm actually really glad about. I almost feel like, to borrow SBF's infamous phrasing, hey, what if we just build a box?
I'm sorry.
And we put money in that box.
Sorry, we can't say those 3 letters anymore.
Sorry about that.
He who must not be named.
Yeah.
He who must not be named.
He's off chain now. We've scrubbed him from our history.
Hopefully in chains. But
in chains.
But you know, it's like you go to a website, it just says stake, you put money in this box, and then you hope that it grows over time. And there's not really a step where it asks you, okay, but do you know the difference between these boxes? Or do you know how they actually work and how they function, things like that? I'm seeing that a lot more. So we worked with a protocol called Friction. And one of the things that we brought into Friction's UI was there's an interstitial now. You get to Friction's website, they tell you how awesome Friction is and why you should invest. And then it says, what strategies do you want to invest in, right? Do you want crab strategy? Do you want to invest in sustainable stables? Do you want, like you get to pick, and it actually shows you a graph that visualizes the difference in risk and reward. Then when you click through to it, it brings up a page that has the strategy in detail, and it just details risk and reward, so users are more informed as to what they're investing in, and then it provides them with quote unquote the boxes. I've been seeing that a lot more in a lot of different DeFi protocols, and I think that that's really helpful. The second thing is I think there's a lot of progress being made on informing users, and this gets back to what Cheryl was mentioning earlier, informing users as to the results of their activity before they do it. We're working right now on this extension called Stello. It basically sits in the browser, and before you actually execute a transaction with your MetaMask wallet, it says, hey, this comes from a safe source or a not safe source. This is exactly what the transaction is going to do. So I think that adding in those layers on top of on-chain activity is also like a big UX improvement, though these products are still really early. So I can't really say that like the industry is totally shifted, but it's like I'm seeing the right moves.
Yeah, so I think, you know, we're going to start seeing things where, like what you're saying, like there will be transaction simulators where before I fully commit, you'll be able to see kind of like, is all my money going to be gone in my virtual wallet, right? Kind of thing, right? Does anybody else want to add to this?
I think I totally agree. On the application level, there have been a ton of improvements, like even Uniswap being a standard, kind of an improvement from a few years ago. But in some ways, because of how fragmented it's become, there's also the broader like kind of meta UX that.
What is a meta UX? Can I invest?
I guess just the experience of navigating crypto is a lot more difficult. I think maybe more than 2 years ago, it was just like Ethereum, smaller community, you know, just some.
Don't forget about Litecoin.
Yes. Oh, also just Bitcoin, Litecoin wallets where you can do like two things.
What are those?
I forget. Sorry.
You don't remember? It's two things, and we don't have any idea what that is. All right.
Yeah.
I guess it's not that important.
But now you get into crypto, you buy something on Coinbase, you get into MetaMask, you see like a Solana project, you want to get there, you have to bridge, you have to find all of these tools that aren't in the same place. You're just jumping to like 4 websites to do a single action. That, I think, is like a number of steps backwards from a few years ago. But I think on the flip side, it's more of a growing pain. Like, there's more things in the ecosystem, so there's decision paralysis, there's just more confusion.
Got it. So for people out there that are sitting, how many people think that you would use your MetaMask wallet for future applications such as doing e-commerce or, you know, like the things that everyone keeps promising but like actually deliver? Like, would you actually use your MetaMask wallet to do this? Would you rather just use your credit card? And is there like, yeah, would anybody buy e-commerce with their MetaMask? All right, you've just doxed yourself, right? Because now you've connected your MetaMask to your physical address. Like, I think that's kind of the problem still, too. There's this kind of this layer of anonymity that exists that people don't want to know my entire net worth because I made a purchase.
Yep.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. And to one thing that we were saying before about us being early, and this is a place where maybe 1998 is a little too generous. We've worked with a few privacy protocols, and like it is actually a fully solvable problem where like you can obfuscate people's identities. You can do it also while being compliant, largely, right? Like there are ways to make sure that that bad actors are pulled out of privacy protocols so that they can't, you know, just like the way that people used Tornado Cash. So that can happen, but they are operating in a massive legal gray area where there's no regulatory clarity in any large market on if these privacy protocols are doing enough to fight bad actors. And so I think I'm not optimistic that in the next 5 years we're going to get regulatory clarity on that, which means that the e-commerce use cases, unfortunately, are going to be mostly limited to developing markets, which is frustrating.
I mean, I think that's true, but being limited to developing markets in some ways is not bad, right? I think this audience, we're very privileged to have access to credit cards. There's still a lot of people who don't have access to credit cards, and if they can transact with really anything, that's not just a stack of cash. That's already kind of an improvement. So in that sense, I think both of these two's answers highlighted that. In some ways, I think the industry's really grown up a lot, and that comes with good and bad. If you're talking about UX on an individual application level, there's no question it's better. I mean, if you think about the first trade that I ever made on Ethereum on Uniswap, I was like, what the fuck is a gas fee, right? And then it's you sit there, you wait 5 minutes, and because I'm cheap and I'm Chinese, I made a really low gas fee and it didn't go through, so I had to do it again. I'm like, this is just not it. And now, you can go in Orca, chill, you can trade. It costs less than a cent. You don't have to do a gas fee, and it's you get a confirmation in 10 seconds, right? So that is better. But along with growing up, now we have these copies across all these different chains of all these applications. It's really fragmented, to Brandon's point, and I think we've lost a lot of the creativity and fun that we used to have back in the Ethereum days. That's mostly in the NFT world now. And so in that sense, I feel we've taken a step back in terms of sort of the experience for developers and for the community.
Well, for you, Cheryl,
Yeah.
you're doing something completely different, right? Because you're, for better or worse, kind of CeFi with loyalty points. So you don't have this issue with gas problems. You could totally do an e-commerce platform with loyalty points. So are you solving it? Is this the future? Is the future PointSwap? Do you know?
Yes. Actually, I believe that the Web3 will never replace the whole of Web2, but we can utilize some Web3 elements that solve the critical problem that Web2 cannot, such like trust, privacy, and some asset transfer. So we just step back and think about, are we solving a meaningful enough problem for the user by this blockchain technology? So we go back and to start from our user experience so that we integrate our wallet into our application first. Maybe it's more like CeFi, but we offer the choice for the users that you can use the wallet integrate into our application, or you can use your wallet. Both are fine for the users. So I think it's the first strategy to onboard our first batch of users.
All right. So we have 5 minutes left, and I'm going to take advantage of the situation and allow you guys to ask a question to the crowd. Everybody get one question. This is literally user testing right now. You can go ahead and survey the crowd. We're not paying you anything. So you're just going to have to just raise your hand, please, if it's true. But you guys can ask one question that you want to know from the audience, and they will just show hands what it is. So I will ask a question right now. How many people have purchased an NFT for the art? You guys are liars. I'm just kidding. No, I bought an NFT. I have a Bored Ape, and I'm happy with it. But I didn't buy it for the money or anything like that. I spent money buying it, and I'm very happy to have it because now I don't need to put my face up here. This is socially acceptable. I can have a picture of a monkey at a professional event. That's amazing. That's worth the money, right? I don't have to get doxxed every time I go speak. So in my opinion, I think that there are kind of these interesting use cases that exist. And we saw that there are art lovers, art connoisseurs sitting in the audience right now. So I'm wondering, do you guys have a question? I know I totally am just going completely off the cuff right now. But if you guys could ask one question, to a live DGen crowd, what would that question be? Yeah. Let me, I can play the Jeopardy me theme song. Yeah.
Let's see. I don't know. I'm too deep in interrupt. How many of you guys have used or know what a bridge is?
Wow, that's more than I thought, yeah. I thought everyone just deposits into Binance and goes out because it's like way cheaper. But I guess that's not really an option right now. Yeah. That's why I have this monkey picture. They don't know who I am.
I also have a question, and I'm very, very interested to kind of see what the room says about this. Because I take it that if you're showing up in the middle of a crypto winter to Taipei Blockchain Week, this is an audience full of people that are very well versed in crypto, and I would assume are also good at avoiding like clear scams, right? Like something, you go to a website, it's like, oh yeah, just connect your wallet, we'll give you $1 million. You're like, I'm not gonna do that.
I'm still waiting.
Who here over the past year
token.
either lost money in FTX, Luna, or otherwise was rug pulled to a significant degree? Raise your hands. That's a big chunk of the room. That's a big chunk. And I think tying that to UX though, like that is the thing that concerns me, right? Because like if we're, in rooms full of educated and experienced people that know far more than the average person, and that's still happening, then there's a lot more we've got to do to kind of protect users. But yeah, I mean, that honestly was a little higher than I thought it would be. But hopefully looking forward to 2023, we'll get better at this and we'll build safer experiences on chain.
Everyone graduates after you get scammed the first time,
Right.
It's like you gotta go, like whenever someone starts, I'm like, all right, here's like, some ETH. Okay, now go out there and get scammed. Because then you're gonna learn how to play the game, right? It's kind of the case. So do you guys have something? Anything at all. You can ask for anything, like what's your favorite soda? You can just do anything you want.
Just airdrop. Any tips for this talk directly to Orca.sol? No, okay. Why don't we just build on the kind of the theme that we've been going on already around custody? So how many people here actually self-custody the majority of their crypto, or at least know how they would? Okay, we got like 30, 40%, I think. So, I feel like I didn't learn this until way too late. So let me just give a few tips for how you can actually do that. So generally, I like to think about my funds as like a grid. We have these 2 boxes up here, which are the public docs wallets, and then the 2 addresses below, which are the private wallets. You want to separate into stuff that's hot and stuff that's cold, right? So stuff that you got in your super trustworthy browser extension, don't put a lot of shit there. Put the majority of stuff on a hardware wallet. If you have NFTs and you're going to make them your profile picture so you don't have to actually look at your face when you go on stage, put that in an address that you expect to be doxed. Put that in a public-facing address along with all the other NFTs that you're going to display. Put a little bit of money also in there if you want to play around with applications and like send those addresses to other people. Everything else, put in the non-doxed wallet and try to use that as little as possible. And if you really are trying to actually like save your funds or stake them or whatever, put them in a ledger, in cold storage, in a not doxed address. So main thing is I think like anything, NFTs that you're gonna like show to other people, people can find your address from the fact that you own this NFT. Do not put it in something like where you also wanna have addresses that are not traceable. This is just like some lecture that I'm going into, but I think it's actually shockingly difficult, and like, please, people, do not mix your NFTs with like funds that you don't want exposed.
And this is why UX is important. All right, I think we're out of time. Did you want to just say one last word?
Can I speak something for PointSwap?
No, we're actually out of time.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Sorry.
PointSwap. All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.